Hey everyone, the quality is absolutely atrocious. It is like I'm filming this on a potato. I might as well be. I have my gong cha here. It is late at night. I kind of promised myself I would never make another YouTube video. But then there's this terrible news out of Toronto about a thing I've talked about for years and years and years. I've written a lot about it, so there's a blog post. It'll be linked in the description. It's very detailed. I wrote it. It took hours to write. I am not going to sleep tonight because I have a young child who keeps me up, and now I have also stayed up super late to make a video as if I'm still doing YouTube. This is important to me. It's an emotional topic. It's kind of painful, and so I got gongcha, and yeah, I decided I had to make a video to kind of overview the situation because I did this detailed blog announcement. If you enjoyed RM Transit over the years and you still want that good RM Transit content around the world, I've renamed my blog to make it global, and I'm going to still be doing global transit content, very much the same stuff I've been doing at RM Transit over the years on the blog. Yay, hurrah, terrible news, but I'm doing that, so fun. Go subscribe to the blog if you're not already for all of that stuff. I'm going to have a post on LA's new airport train out soon and other cities around the world. It's going to be exciting. But anyways, terrible news in the last few days. Let's talk about it. That's what today is about. Basically, years ago, Toronto Metrolinx, the regional transit agency in Toronto, announced that they were going to be working with Deutsche Bahn, the German national railway operator, to basically turn the GO train network into an electric regional rail system like an S-Bahn in Germany, sort of, more or less. Whether that was the plan is unclear. And this article came out because this contract, if you hadn't heard, which you may not have if you're watching this video, got canceled. And so an article came out like a day or two ago that kind of shook the world because it came out and it talked about all of these things. And basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight what I wrote in the blog, more emotionally in video format, and you can read the blog to hear all of the details, read the article that's linked in the blog, etc. Basically, why does this matter to me? My entire YouTube channel, I think more than anything else, I made videos about the Go electrification expansion, Go RER project. The names are ridiculous. The fact that we don't have a coherent name is bad. It's kind of like the tip of the iceberg of bad things. But it was my reason for moving to Toronto. Before I moved to Toronto, I was like spending time on the Metrolinx website, looking at the plans, etc., because I was so interested in it. I was excited to go to U of T for computer science, but I went to Toronto because it was the big city in Canada and it was doing cool transit stuff. And I remember watching like public consultations for random projects around the GTHA for Go, like in my bedroom in Vancouver when I was in high school. So this is what I did. I moved to Toronto for this reason. I built my YouTube channel around this thing. The first YouTube video I made was about Go Transit. Most of my friends in Toronto are transit people at the different transit agencies and engineering firms and the like. My life kind of revolves around transit. Part of why I need to keep this blog thing happening because I just have to talk about transit. But so it's been very depressing because I have friends that work at the various organizations involved in this project, and I've just been hearing depressing things for years. And this article came out, and it was like, yeah, that's basically what I've been hearing for 2 years. It's nice that that's public information. Let's talk about it. But it's depressing. It's like my personal life, my group chat. We talk about, oh no, look at that new news about this depressing transit thing happening. We talk about good stuff too, but there's a focus on the negative, and it's difficult. So anyways, what has actually happened? My life has revolved around this project, but it's gone off the rails, to use a cliche term that they literally use for the topic of this article, which is in the trillium. Good job to them, because it's actually a really long, detailed article, and I'll be honest, I haven't regularly read the trillium. I don't think I've ever read the trillium, but it was just really good, and they covered a lot of details. And basically what happens in the article and what they talk about is that the whole thing just kind of went bad. And I can attest to this personally. I've met some people who work at DB and who, or have worked on this project for DB and who are gone now, obviously. And like when they came, they were like, "Oh, we're gonna turn this into like, what do you think about like doing this thing from France, and they do this in Japan, and what if we did it like this?" And I remember having meetings with people like this, and it was not like a work thing. They weren't doing it for work. They were just passionate about it, and so they asked the transit guy in Toronto, who was making videos, "What do you think about this? Like, oh, how frequent is this and that?" And so I saw the excitement, and then I saw like over the years as the excitement drained, people were laid off. It was just very depressing. And basically, the article highlights that there was these huge rifts between what DB kind of envisioned or what they were trying to do and Metrolinx. And there's a lot of stuff, and I get the sense that DB screwed some stuff up, like as probably happens on projects of this scale. But there was, it seems like a lot of difficulties dealing with Metrolinx, and maybe that's not so surprising. I've made videos, tons of videos over the years about my frustrations with things they're doing that don't make a lot of sense, like not having additional downtown GO stations or not having all trains stop where lines branch out so that you can have kind of better service to the suburbs. And so I get the sense that Metrolinx isn't necessarily fully clued in, at least at the highest levels, to how to operate a good train system. I mean, they're electrifying, or they were planning to electrify, or that was the plan here, and so that's a good thing. But like they didn't for decades, even though the Australian cities did and other places did. They realized it was obvious, so we're clearly way behind. And so it's not surprising that they have this kind of attitude that comes out in the article, where it's like people are saying that we shouldn't run trains in both directions, and trains. A comment I remember hearing at one point, I don't even remember from where, is that like, what is this, a subway? Trains running every few minutes? And it's just like, okay, these people run transit, but some of them aren't very serious about transit. They certainly don't watch RM transit videos if they're saying things like, why does a train need to run as frequently as a subway in the city where it is effectively a subway, or where it could function like a subway. So yeah, very frustrating. It sounds like DB pushed for, I know that people at DB were pushing for an impressive project. I don't know all of the details. Again, I'm sure DB screwed stuff up. I didn't work on the project. I just, it's what you hear through the grapevine. But I've seen, the kind of things we do, and so I can kind of imagine that we did the kind of things we often do, which don't make a lot of sense, but we do them sometimes for imagined reasons or for all kinds of reasons that don't make sense in the grand scheme of things, and certainly don't generate a great transit system for people. And I do mention this in the blog, but the fact that there's not more transparency is a big part of the problem here, right? Like sometimes you can't sign a contract. You need some degree of secrecy, I guess, maybe, but like Italy is far more transparent with public contracting than we are, and their costs are way lower. They build regional electric train systems for way less. They have all kinds of smart policies, like not letting you build too close to rail lines so that you can expand them in the future. Marco Kitty from Montreal, he blogs, he's on Twitter and stuff, Blue Sky. He talks about this stuff all the time. It's like, okay, we know that this is kind of a silly excuse, but if there was more transparency, when some of these silly things, like the idea that trains shouldn't run both directions, when these ideas were floating around between Metrolinx and DB, as the article talks about, then the public could just say that's crazy, and then we could move beyond that. But because there's not transparency, you only get these kind of like refresh moments when there's a big article or when a contract fails or something, and it's really dysfunctional. Like this is just not how you should do these big projects. And yeah, it's like interconnected with P3s and all of these things that just clearly aren't working very well in terms of the outcomes they're delivering, because we don't have an electric train system, even though we've been talking about it for over a decade. And Caltrain does, and like San Francisco is extremely dysfunctional at building infrastructure, and they still managed to electrify their train system. We haven't still. There's also talk about descoping, like we're going to do less stuff because it's expensive now. The costs have escalated because the thing has taken so long. If you've watched my videos with Paige Saunders, we talk about Paige talks about the slow expensive project, which is that like if a project takes a long time, you're paying people for years and years of extra time, and there's inflation, and there's all of these other things that get tied up. And so when it's like, oh, we need to reduce the scope of the project, it's like, well, no, you needed to deliver the project years ago because you've been talking about it for over a decade. And now, only because you haven't delivered stuff, things are tightening down. But again, like we're spending billions and billions of dollars. Like the Ontario line, it's a great project, but it's going to cost like apparently $30 billion. Somehow this wasn't a bigger news item. And it's like, that's the most expensive subway possibly ever constructed. So the idea that like we just don't have enough money, we don't use the money effectively enough. And it's often because of the sort of dysfunctional stuff that gets talked about in the article that we don't use money well. And like if you've read anything about California High-Speed Rail or Second Avenue Subway, or if you've read Ezra Klein's Abundance, which I'm not going to comment on anything else about it besides to say that it's accurate on the problems that transit projects face because it describes a lot of the things that have clearly happened with this GO project. That's why things are expensive. That's why they don't get done. And we need to address those things. And you know, there's talk about how Metrolinx, it seems like Metrolinx, they hired an organization that was good at running trains. The organization told them, you should do these things to run trains frequently. And maybe they were jerks about it. Maybe they said things that weren't practical. But clearly the solution was not to fire them. It was to implement some of their ideas or to massage them to work in the Canadian context or to consider, in some cases, maybe the way we do things in Canada is wrong. If the biggest city in the country is, this is a national scale project. If you need to get like national level regulators involved, that would make sense. It's like, this is a project on the scale of building high-speed rail. It's not as long of a project, but it's huge within a single region. That is our biggest city, our biggest economic powerhouse. So like, you can make whatever excuses you want. Other places in the world have figured these things out that are, arguably more dysfunctional than us. And so clearly we should be able to. And instead it seems like Metrolinx wasn't happy that they, that there was conflicts and stuff, and so they fired them and or terminated them, whatever you want to say. There's talk about they weren't ready to take over, but it sounds like Metrolinx made it really hard for them to do that, and so it's extremely frustrating. And I know that we've, the international transit community, Canada's not really a part of it because we choose to be part of the North American transit community instead. Like I've heard people in Canada who work in transit say like, what's InnoTrans? Which most people who watch this video probably know. It's the huge show that they put on in Berlin every year where they like roll out new train models and stuff, and Jeff Marshall goes to it. If if you're passionate about this, these things, and so many people in the North American transit industry just don't. They're not. And it's extremely frustrating. But like that community is probably going to say, hey, look, the Germans went to Toronto. The Torontonians didn't listen to their advice. Whatever the advice might have been, they still don't have electric trains. They're not very good at this stuff. Maybe we shouldn't work with them. So it's just bad for the industry and for our country and for transit. There's just all kinds of things like that where it feels like, it was kind of rocking a hard place. And instead of like working to a solution, they just said, no, we're not going to do this anymore. And some of the problems mentioned are crazy, like the idea that there are level crossings. There are too many level crossings and it's going to cause problems. It's like, no, there are not. Look at Tokyo. I'm pretty sure someone mentioned there's still maybe a level crossing on the Yamanote line. It runs every 4 minutes in both directions. There are crazy level crossings in Japan. Yeah, maybe they don't meet our Canadian standards. They have good trains and we don't have good trains. And also Toronto has grade separated like most of the serious crossings. Like if you go around Toronto and most of the region, the really egregious grade crossings have either been removed or we're removing them right now. So the idea that this is a huge problem is crazy because we're not running Tokyo level frequencies and most of the crossings are already grade separated. And some tiny 2-lane street in Scarborough does not need a grade separation. Gates come down, train passes in like 15 seconds, gates go back up. It's frustrating. A lot of the issues that we've talked about in the channel in the past, Union Station, all of these things, frustrating. It sounds like now what's going to happen is there's going to be electrification on the Up Express, the Lakeshore line, but only to the edge of downtown Toronto, where it sounds like they're not electrifying for unclear reasons. It sounded at one point like it was the Union Station train shed. That's probably still part of it. Sounds like it could be other things. They're going to use battery trains, it sounds like, to go through the downtown. It's annoying and silly. Other cities don't do this. It doesn't really matter. At least most of the line is electrified and we can fix the middle at some point. But it's when you have a solution for for a problem that no one else uses, you have to go like, okay, we might be making this, we might be doing something wrong here. We're holding a graph upside down or something. That's not great. And so, I mean, I think fundamentally the problem with all of this is that there wasn't a clear plan from the beginning. There were these kind of business cases and stuff that were like 15 minutes here, 15 minutes, but they weren't specific. To plan railway infrastructure, you need a specific schedule. You need to say where trains are going to be and when. We never had this, and it sounds like instead of like agreeing to lock one down, there was just this analysis paralysis. It sounds like it was both between DB and Metrolinx, where the plans were changing constantly, which means the infrastructure that you need to build can't really be built because it has to be tailored to the plan. And so the plan was changing, the infrastructure was changing. At some point, I think you have to accept that you're never going to have a perfect solution and start building. A lot of the things, we could decide this is a solution. We're going to build towards that. And if long-term it doesn't work, other cities have this, you upgrade the railway over time, you add more quad track, you enhance the signaling further if necessary. But the lack of a clear plan seems like a really silly reason to have all of these problems. But we still haven't decided basic things. And Union Station is a clear example. If you don't know how frequent the trains are going to be, you don't know how big the platforms need to be. And so there's all of this, like, we didn't lock things down. Decisions weren't locked down, and it led to all of these problems. And so I kind of end all of the blog and end my discussion here with what you can do and where are we now. The reality is, with the infrastructure we already have, we can run a pretty good train service. And the main limitation, it seems like, is we just don't have enough trains because we only have, I think, 80 locomotives. Maybe we have a few more because we've purchased more. But yeah, that might be an issue. But the infrastructure we have on Lakeshore, it already allows 15-minute service all day, bidirectional. Like, that's already a thing today. People talk about, like, maybe this is coming in the future. And so much of my videos were talking about, like, no, we have a lot of it already. So Lakeshore, already 15 minutes is possible because we do it on weekends now. We did it all like off-peak before. I think possibly because we don't have enough trains to operate peak service and that level of frequency in both directions. And so that could be a problem. We should order more trains. We've known we needed more trains. I don't know why we haven't ordered more trains. Besides, the perfect train we haven't decided where the perfect train is, right? And it's like, well, now we're in this bad situation. But Lakeshore is great. You can do 15-minute service. You can do better than that because double track railway, the main limitation is signaling. And it seems like we are moving towards the right signaling solution, which is the European train control system. They use it in India, in China as a modified version, in Europe, obviously, Australia, other places, Mexico, actually. That's the right solution, but it seems like it's happening slowly. It would be good if we accelerated that. But that will allow, from a signaling perspective, super high frequency. And then beyond Lakeshore, Barrie and Stouffville, double tracking is happening. Stouffville is almost fully double tracked. Even though there's a short section of single track near Kennedy Station, you could still run 15-minute service because the section is so short, and it will then go into quad track on the Lakeshore line. And so, 15-minute service from Markham to Brampton, where exactly in those places is a different question, but that's doable in the next few years because the construction is like advanced for that. And so we have like the stuff done to run 15-minute bidirectional service on 4 of the 5 RER lines. Barrie is behind, more double tracking needed. We did a lot on the Stouffville line. It didn't seem to be that challenging, so I assume it's going to be like 5 years if we try to get it done, and you could do 15 minutes there. But if we're honest, like Lakeshore level service, i.e. every 30 minutes, like Lakeshore's had for like 10, 15 years now, and that's been very successful, and that is a big upgrade over what these lines have right now. That's possible on Stouffville, Barrie, and Kitchener soon, / Kitchener kind of already has it. And so my point is that already with the stuff we've built that I've talked about on the channel, we can have much better service than we do today. The question is more about how good will it get in the future. DB, it seemed like, was pushing for a subway level of service or something closer to that. There's nothing that prevents us from getting there. It's just now a question of how long it will take. Like, we're going to have to get there eventually. Toronto's getting bigger. More people are getting on the GO trains constantly. There's more development around the stations. It is inevitable that we will need to run more trains. I think the things that will force more trains to be run are just lots of ridership, because crowded trains will get politicians to go, we need more trains to Markham, Brampton, Mississauga, wherever. and that will be the impetus to actually make things happen. With like highway projects, when there's congestion, more roads get built. When there's congestion on the rails, assuming that you don't need to spend billions of dollars, which you shouldn't need to buy more trains and do some electrification, that stuff gets done. And so I think the network succeeding and more service running will beget more service running and the network succeeding more. It sounds like electrification of Lakeshore is still going to happen. And so I think once that happens and everyone sees, wow, this is like, it's really fast, it's super frequent, it's kind of like, it's not a subway, but it's kind of like that. That will cause them to buy in, and people in Brampton and Markham and York region on the Barrie line will all be like, we need this level of service too. So I think that's how we get to higher levels of service. It's not a big lift. If Lakeshore is getting electrified, the additional electrification to get up to like Unionville, as was planned, is not that much. The Kitchener line is a little more, but it was all prepared for electrification as part of the Georgetown South project. And so it's, we like everything is lined up for success. We really just need to decide on, electrifying stuff and faster, ideally, building the stations that we need, i.e. we need more stations in downtown Toronto. At the very least, we should be making sure that Metrolinx has the land required to do that and air rights or whatever so that they can build those stations. Because Union Station it's already extremely crowded. And if we start running better service, it's going to get even busier. It's not really laid out for high capacities of people moving in and out. There's a lot of columns everywhere. There's not like space for people to really disperse into because it's all these small passageways connected up. There's not like really a giant space that can handle like thousands and thousands of people. Unless people are going into the actual streets, maybe we need to open up plaza spaces and stuff. But Union isn't enough alone. So you need those additional stations. You need the electrification. But we can already have much better transit without that stuff. And the main barrier to it is just like Metrolinx buying more trains and finishing the work that they've already started that's just been extremely slow moving. And so what can you do? Well, I'm not really an expert in this. Politicians don't talk to me. Transit agencies don't really talk to me, unfortunately. But what I would say is, reach out to your politicians at every level because they're all funding it. They're all paying for it. It's relevant to all of them. And say, you want this. This is better transit. It's so easy. Like electric trains they're a proven technology. The Northeast in the US has them. The rest of the world has them. Developing countries, developed countries, everywhere else has them more or less. And we're so close to having them. So we just go the extra mile and get this project done. Say that to all your politicians. Send them this article. Tell them how frustrating it is that it doesn't seem like Metrolinx is being kind of like held on a tight leash or forced to kind of like get this project done or get it moving or deliver results. Like they have provided more service over the years, but it's been so slow going and it doesn't feel like they couldn't have done it a lot faster. I mean, Denver has built an electric train system with more frequency than Toronto. And, at the end of the day, what are we building towards? It's basically just the Up Express. The Up Express is not electric, but it's got level boarding. The trains all go to one platform, at least at Union Station and Pearson, so it's easy to navigate. There are multiple units, so they're fast. It's basically just, and notice the Up Express is diesel. We could have that level of service everywhere if we just, kind of got the gears turning in the right ways. And that would be amazing. It would be a game changer for everyone. It would be great for the country. It would be great for the city. And that's still possible. So it's all very frustrating. You can read my blog post about it. I really appreciate you watching this video. I am exhausted. I'm passionate about this issue. Great things can be still in store for us. Thanks for watching. And this may be my last video. So goodbye.